Hey, it's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self-publisher. I share my creative process here with you on the internet. If you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, see behind-the-scenes artwork before anybody else, get to read my comic books for free online, you can go to patreon.com/GERIMI and sign up to become a Patreon subscriber. If you'd like to get a free digital sketchbook and also get a monthly email from me containing work-in-progress animated GIFs, see what I'm up to, little blog posts sharing more insights into my creative process, you can go to newsletter.jeremy.net, sign up for my monthly newsletter. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Kindle or Comixology, go to amazon.jeremy.net. You can go, that will take you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up books like my first graphic novel, I Have the Gods. It's a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. Or you can pick up volume 1 of my comic book, Morningstar. Morningstar tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. This book contains issues 1 through 4 plus bonus features. So you check all that out at amazon.jeremy.net. Also, you can pick up the final issue of Morningstar is now available at my main website, jeremy.net. You can pick that up directly from there. All right. See, I see Amaris is already in the chat. Negro Frazetta's there. What's up, everybody? How you guys doing? Amaris says she's busy babysitting, but she says she's cool. Put the kids down for a nap. All right. I've recently changed things, moved things around in my studio, so I'm trying to figure out where to sit these while I'm working. All right. Just set those down. Hopefully I will not spill coffee on them. All right. So today, those who are on the Patreon, their Patreon subscribers, know from our Discord server that I have been in a figure drawing jag lately. Part of that is that I've been taking classes with Carl Ganas at figuredrawingschool.com. And one of the things that I do with my work, and I've mentioned this ever since I discovered it. You know, it was something that that the instructor told me to do for many, many years studying in person. And it was a while before I started doing, which was to take my drawings from class and actually just rework them. And by rework them, it's analysis. It's not that I'm just drawing to just try and say, all right, I want to make a better drawing. It's just looking at what I did and saying, why does this part of the drawing work? Why does this part of the drawing not work? Are the proportions off? Try fixing proportions. Am I not getting a good sense of volume, structure? Is the gesture poor? All of those things. So I've just got a few drawings. Well, this is basically right here what I'm talking about. I don't think any of these 3 drawings are a great drawing here. I've also got a bunch of notes because I've been testing out some different types of pencils. So these notes are just on the just different things about how I liked the feeling of different pencils. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through this pose, and I'm going to just rework this, and then go back through a few other poses from the same session and sketch, just re-sketches and make mistakes. Try to fix mistakes and learn and understand what I'm doing wrong. Negro Frazetta in the chat says, did you not like the Conti pencils? It's funny. In the end, I've got a note of what my final top 4 drawings are. And 2 of them are Contis. One of them is the Conti that you recommended, the 1710. And then I also really like the sepia. I think it's a 637. It's 6 something. But the sepia and the Conti and the Pierre Noir, Conti Paris charcoal pencils. The problem I had is that the Pierre Noir, it was working pretty well, but it was a little dark, and I needed to work with it and practice with it a little bit more. However, it broke. My whole thing has just been trying to find pencils that don't break as much. And generally, my go-to pencil are General's number 2B charcoal pencils. Let me just start drawing here while we talk about this. I also see Jay Kings in the chat, says, what's good, brother and people? Good to see you too. It is all good. We're sitting here doing a little drawing exploration. As I always like to say, your bad drawings are like a big bullseye showing you what you're doing wrong. I think, something I've been trying to also figure out is how to set this up so you guys can see a little bit closer what I'm doing. Let me move this, see if I can get the camera a little closer to the paper, but I also want to have it at an angle where you guys can actually see what I'm looking at. I don't want to block the actual drawing page. I might need to put the drawings that I'm looking at somewhere else and just focus on this. In fact, that's probably going to have to be the wiser of the two decisions here, is to find some place to put this so I can just let you guys get nice and close to the drawing. Anyway, the side note that I started going on about Conte of Paris is that the 710s, I really like them, but then about halfway through using it, it broke multiple times. And I've got a few pencils that broke multiple times. I just took them out of the running. But the Pierre Noir, I feel like it was interesting enough. It gave me an interesting enough line that I liked, that I think I'm gonna get a few more of those and try those out before, saying one way or the other, yes or no, I'm gonna switch to that. But what is really interesting about this whole process is that I went through and I just ordered a bunch of new pencils that I haven't, that I either don't remember how I enjoyed using them, or just I had not used before. And by the end of the whole process, I came back to the fact that what I have been using, the General's 2B is still pretty much my go-to. Let's see here. All right. So that, now I can get you, also my lights are a little high. These lights in. Let's try and adjust the camera so I can angle this down a little bit more. I mean, realistically, I should just have this whole thing turned horizontally to fill up the space for you guys visually, but you know what? Screw it. For you guys, we will change things up. It becomes problematic because then I'm flipping pages towards where I have the camera stand, and it's a little bit of a pain in the ass. But if I wanted things easy, then, I would have said, hey, I want to be an artist. Sometimes you just got to do things the hard way. So let's turn it this way. That way I can fill up the camera and let you guys really see what I'm working on. All right. There we go. So you guys can actually see you can kind of see. So this was the initial mark that I started making. Nice thing is that mark is light enough that I can just ignore it and just start drawing in a different direction. Let's see. Oh, Amar's in the chat. What's up, Amar? How you doing? Let's see, Negro Frazetta said another good pencil is the Montmort Woodless Graphite EE. So it's 50% charcoal, 50% graphite. I think I may play around with a few other pencils, but for the most part, I ended up with like 8 or 10 different pencils that I tried out. And in the long run, I found that what I like best is what I had been using for a long time, the 2B. So I think I may stick with the General 2B for a while. All right. So my process tends to be that when I'm starting a drawing, I try to start with just one line that measures the height of the whole pose. And that is mainly to help me with proportion, because we all have that whole thing of like a drawing starts getting a little too long in one direction or another. And this is another reason why I wanted to get the camera close, because I think if I zoomed out, this very, very light tone I made right here, you probably wouldn't even see that. Because it's supposed to be light, because it's not supposed to show up in the finished drawing. And then from there, what I do is I work the gesture. I'll draw this a little bit darker so you can see it up here, the endpoints. What I do is I try to work the gesture within this point. So I try to start with the long line of the foot. The figure kind of bows out. So there's one overall gesture that's just the body leaning kind of back, but with the shoulder that's on the left up, other shoulder dip down. Now, the midpoint of the figure is the bottom of the pelvis. So I put in a light tone in there. Now, from here, the hip would be kind of a contrapposto. Usually the shoulder that's dipped down has the hip raised up, and the hip that's raised up has the shoulder that's raised up on the opposite side of the hip is dipped down. The body tends to do that. Not in every pose, but it tends to do that. However, in this pose, the upper torso is turned kind of 3/4, but the pelvis is pretty much profile. And it's profile and dipped forward a little bit. Again, this is one of those situations where I'm probably drawing too light for you to see, so I'm going a little bit darker here. Generally speaking, I try to, one of the things I do is I am a heavy-handed artist, so I am constantly trying to train myself to draw lighter. And charcoal pencil is really good for that because it'll go real dark if you let it. Now, the reason why I was trying to point out that that thing about the hips, about this being in profile, is that the hip that's closer to us, that's down here, I want to make sure I mentally understand that drawing through this cube, this hip is down here, the other hip is up here, because you're not seeing that slant. Like if you're looking at a straight on figure, let's say that just this box represents a torso, and you've got one shoulder up like this, the other shoulder down. If you're looking at a figure straight on, you're going to be able to tell these are just legs coming out. You're going to be able to tell which hip is higher, which hip is lower. But when you're drawing from a profile, you still need to be aware of which hip is higher and which hip is lower, because that's also going to affect, in terms of the legs, where the knees should be. Because you'd wonder, if you've got one hip that's higher, one hip that's lower, how is it that the legs appear to be kind of at the same level, or the knees appear to be the same level? That's because one hip that's lower, you may also have a leg that's bent. So at the end, the knees may be, where they're starting from, in terms of the hips, may be different heights, but where the height that the knees end up will frequently, not frequently, but depending on the pose, they can end up being the same. So my whole point is that I make these, this is still the gesture phase, and usually I draw this much quicker than I'm drawing, because I'm usually not talking to people while I'm drawing it. You know, and somebody who I think is a master draftsperson can usually block this out in a few seconds. A few meaning like maybe 20 or 30 seconds. Whereas for me, I tend to be a little bit slower and tweaking and moving the gesture around. Sometimes it'll take me a minute, a full minute to do my gesture drawing. Or maybe I'll draw it in 30 seconds, but then I spend maybe another 30 seconds making corrections and adjustments. So for me, that's what a gesture drawing usually is. Sometimes the lines are harder than that, but for the most part, it's just me trying to figure out, you know, where all the limbs are, the head, the relationship between the rib cage and the pelvis. Let's see, Amar says, I am great, and you? Me, I'm good. And it's funny because you guys on Discord, you guys have seen how much figure drawing stuff I've been doing, and I was actually debating what to do with the video this morning, the live stream, because pardon me, coffee sip, a little break of coffee, fuel to keep me going. I haven't worked on that Morningstar cover that I was doing since last week. Most of this week has been working on figure drawing stuff. And I was actually debating whether to keep working on the Morningstar stuff today, because I've been doing figure drawing stuff all week, but the figure drawing stuff wasn't really for any project. It was just me trying to work on stuff from class, trying to resolve some things that I felt weren't coming out well in my drawings. For instance, this guy I'm looking at, I realized his proportions feel off in that his legs don't feel long enough. Part of that is also that the model we had was a model who is slender but muscular. And the real challenge is that he had kind of a slender torso and frame, but very broad shoulders. And trying to catch that in the sketch, I started making him look just a little bit more bulky. So this is what I talk about in terms of me refining the gesture as I go, is that I'll see stuff early on and I'll realize, oh wait, what I originally drew does not feel correct. And it's a matter of, do I need to erase it, or is it just a matter of just reshaping and adjusting? Like, I moved the feet from here, pulled the line down a little bit, foot down there. Same with the knee, just change the lengths a little bit. But yeah, I think I decided to want to do a live stream with figure drawing only because I want to vary up the subject matter that's on the YouTube channel. Because I've been getting so much more back into my figure studies, I thought maybe I'll try to do a video about figure drawing once a month. Or twice a month is what I actually meant to say. To try and do it twice a month. Let's try a little experiment here. Let's see what happens if we get lower and closer. This is something I been thinking about, just in terms of how to set up the camera to give you guys an optimum viewing experience. What I really need to do is get a DSLR. That's just what it comes down to. But they're not cheap. But what I wanted to do is see if I can angle this in such a way that my hand isn't getting in the way as much. And actually, now I understand why I had my drawing board set up the way I had the camera set up the way I did before. So I had it at an angle so that, so this is another thing. When I don't do figure drawings on the live stream for a while, I forget about the little tweaks and adjustments that I make. For instance, the fact that I tried to set this up in such a way, when I say set this, I mean setting the camera up in such a way that you were kind of looking at it almost straight on, but a little bit from the side, so that my hand wouldn't be in the way as much. And for those looking at the little thumbnail of me while I'm working, The other thing is that I'm trying to do this in such a way so that the camera isn't actually in my way while I'm working. Again, a DSLR that I could have up above and zoom in would help fix that. So I am thinking as I'm drawing here that I mentioned more than once that I'm drawing a little bit darker so you guys can see it. And to be honest, it's kind of screwing me because now the drawing is muddier than I'd like it to be. There's too much stuff. So I feel like I need to soften this up, lighten this up a little bit. Not erasing it to the point of obliteration, but it's just knocking it back to the point where I would normally, as dark as I would actually normally have this when I'm drawing. So that there's not, I love construction lines as much as the next guy. To be honest, I was thinking about a little question that I had posted on Facebook, and there's links in the description to all of my various social media. If you go to the Linktree link, um, there is a Facebook page for Jeremy.net, and I posted a question on there asking people what kind of art do they like art, and if so, what kind. And I realized, and I had mentioned that I like all kinds of art, wide variety, sculpture, Renaissance art, film, photography. Like I kind of like a little bit of everything. I like creativity, but I like sketches. I think most of all because they're kind of like in that way that they say that the eyes are the window to the soul, and the sketches are the window to the artist's soul. And that you can kind of see the creative thought process happening on the page of sketches. But what I was saying is that I love construction lines. I actually really do enjoy them in artwork. Kind of seeing the process of how things are built on the page. But when I get a little bit too caught up, and there's too many construction lines or they're too dark, it actually makes it a little bit muddy. It gets in the way of the process. And I'm getting a little bit too refined in here because, to be honest, at this stage of a drawing, this still feels pretty early to me. And I'm already kind of drawing in anatomical details when my goal at this stage is really to try and get basic volumes, to have the basic volumes working. Try to get the collarbone up there. Pecs. Rounded over the rib cage, but still kind of creating a flat surface. Yeah, at this point, for me, it's really just a matter of, like, I'm trying to think of both volumes and anatomy at the same time. Like, I want to get in just the basic feeling that this is a cylinder moving towards us, but at the same time, working in the pec muscles, going under the shoulder. What's funny is, so I've got that stack of drawings to the side of me, off the page you can no longer see now, and there's sketches where I drew the anatomy more detailed, the sketches where I drew the anatomy less detailed. So it's interesting for me to be able to compare this to various attempts at the same pose, trying to fix different things. So let's see here. Amar says, do you think that the cover I did was solid for my first comic book cover, or do I need to do a more dynamic pose or scene with character interactions? That's another thing. On our Patreon Discord server, we've got a place where we share a lot of work in progress. And Amar posted a really cool cover for his comic book, The Divine. And we were just talking about it, and I gave some thoughts on some things. But I mean, overall, I thought it's a fantastic cover. No, I actually think the pose that you used, Amar, is very dynamic, and I think that, like you said, unless other people give you feedback and gives you something that makes you want to go back and refine it, I would say that I think that you're done with that one. I think it's good. There was one thing that I thought, one last thing, but I felt like I didn't want you to feel again like I was nitpicking. But when you've got Lilith's hand coming out, casting that energy, that you lose the shape of her hand a little bit within the energy. So I'm not sure if the idea was if the solution would be to make the silhouette of her hand a little bit stronger within the energy, maybe to give the hand a glow, maybe just outline it, maybe have the energy break up just around the edges of her finger. I'm not sure what the answer is, but it did feel like because it looked like you drew a really good hand doing kind of a Kirby foreshortening. But that hand, the silhouette of the hand, the shape of it, the outline of it is a little hard to read. That wasn't the question you were asking. You were asking, does the pose need to be more dynamic or anything? And I think overall, like, you could go with that cover and be done. I don't think that you need to change anything else on it. The hand thing was the only thing I was mentioning, but I like that. I really like the pose you did. The other thing that I had mentioned on there, and you replied back about it, was the idea of doing all of the covers for the whole series up front. And I think that the reason why I mentioned that is because, and I'm just repeating stuff from our Discord server for the benefit of people that are watching or listening, in that not every cover that I did for Morningstar I feel was the best cover. And I wish that I had drawn all of the covers like as a series, like forgetting about doing them as covers for the comic, but think of them just as I'm going to do, like you had mentioned, doing a series of art prints, treating it like its own separate art assignment. And the twofold of that is, one, having prints to sell early on of the series to kind of get people excited. But two, I think that a lot of people picked up Morningstar just based on the log line. When I was at conventions and I would tell them Lucifer's Fall from Heaven told as a Western, it's Paradise Lost meets Unforgiven. If you like Paradise Lost, if you like Unforgiven, which are damn good movies and stories, people are probably gonna say, "Oh, that sounds really cool." Like, I want to check that out. I want to hear more. I don't know if on their own the covers sold the idea as well as I did, in terms of speaking it. And it's not that the covers needed to make the entire series premise clear, but if each cover was a piece of imagery that grabbed people and made them want to check it out on its own, it's like the comic is already helping me doing the heavy lifting by having really cool covers. So my thoughts were, going forward, I kind of want to do a bunch of covers before I even begin a series to help me with visual development, kind of building out the look and feel of the world. But at the same time, also, if I do a cover and no one wants a print of that cover, maybe that's a sign that cover is not that exciting. I'm not saying that about your cover. I think your cover is very exciting. What I wanted to do was, if I could make a print that was something people wanted to put on their walls, then I think that would move more comics. For example, let me see if I have one laying within arm's reach. I do. So this is my first art book, Wound. You guys can't really see this because it's too close, oddly enough. The camera's too close. But yeah, this is Wound. This was my first art book. I would sell this at conventions, and you know, it's a slim volume, but it's got a bunch of pieces, a little bit of essays and text within it. You know, various pieces that have a little bit of text about my my creative process in here. You know, I've still got copies of this available. I believe it's still available on Amazon. I can't remember if because I've been meaning to do a new art book. But my point being is that people would all the time ask me, what is this about? Is this a comic? And I would just tell them it's an art book, especially a bunch of my prints. But people would pick this up just because they wanted to know more about what is the story of this image. And I feel like I didn't do that kind of justice to the covers on Morningstar. In a perfect world, every single cover that I would draw would have that same effect, where someone would pick up the image and say, I want to know more about this. I don't know anything about it. Tell me more. That's what a cover is supposed to do. So my thoughts for myself are, going forward, I'm going to try and make each cover have that impact. Will I be successful? Who knows? Honestly, I'll probably be, no, you know what? Who knows? Let's be optimistic. The point is to try, to have a goal to achieve, to aim for. See, and here's another thing in terms of drawing life. I come back here and I look at where I very lightly blocked in the head, you can see there. But now I see where I have the midpoint of the torso, and I realize, oh wait, I need to move the head over. I need to move the neck over here. And then pull the head out this way. You know what, I did this a bit wrong because I realize now I'm drawing the neck two-dimensionally instead of thinking of, even though I want it coming out, I have to think about it going, the same way the rib cage is going up in space, the neck is going up away from us. It's coming more forward than the torso. The neck is still like that. We're still looking up at it. And I started drawing it kind of just two-dimensionally. And I'm also peering between wires on the camera, and it's totally screwing up my sense of perspective. Well, see, now that I look at it that way, I do need to push this back here where it was. Perspective's a tricky beast. Well, I shouldn't get too wrapped up in this because it's not a drawing. Like, working out the head was not the point of this pose. With that said, I should still try. Now, see, I've done myself a bit of a disservice because I've drawn all of this and I haven't even really put much effort into the other arm that's over here. And realistically, I always tell myself, try to get the whole figure blocked in before I start doing any anatomical details, where in this case, I actually end up kind of finishing most of the rest of the figure before coming to this hand, this arm rather. So let's see. Amar also says, let me scroll back up here. Oh, Negro Frazetta asked a question. He says, does Carl Ganas teach animal drawing? I know he was an animator. He doesn't teach animal drawing, but he has taken students to the zoo in the past to do sessions for drawing from animals. Right now, he's just doing virtual instructing, whole COVID thing. In the past few years, I don't think he's done any animal drawing classes, but I believe, looking at the Animation Guild website, well, I mean, again, I don't know, you're on the East Coast, you'd have to look and see who offers classes on animal drawing. I'm not sure if there's any. I'm sure there's got to be somebody online that does animal or creature drawing. I mean, shit. I thought the Aaron Blaze had a class on Proco for doing animal drawing. If he doesn't, I am sure somebody does on Schoolism. Oh, Terrell Whitlatch. I think Terrell Whitlatch has it might be creature design, but there's still probably a lot of animal drawing in it. On the Schoolism, I think she has a course that they put out recently this year. So no, Carl Ganas does not currently have an animal drawing course, although Carl Ganas was the one who pointed me towards the Carl Ganas is the one that pointed me towards Joe Weatherly Guide to Animal Drawing. So the Joe Weatherly book, and then the I think it's Joe Coleman, the other artist. There are two great animal drawing books that he pointed me towards. Let's see here. Oh, so Amar was talking about. Let's see, back to talking about comic book covers. He says there's a portal on there, and he says the portal has a mask. That's what the energy he's talking about, or that I was talking about. The energy has a mask, so I could fade it out part of it. So she's the focus character of the issue. He said Vince mentioned that I should push the story with Lilith and Samuel, really show that she has a conflict, or possible conflict with Samuel. Let's see here. He says Samuel is a means to an end for her. And he said, yeah, in terms of covers, he says, yeah, I need to get better at them so people can get hyped when they see and read the book. The art would marry to the cover with a great story. He says, yeah, the cover art is another job and skill in its own. Yeah, I agree. Like, one of the things I really wish I had done for all my Morningstar covers, and again, Morningstar, much as Eye of the Gods was my first self-published graphic novel, Morningstar was my first self-published series. And the learning curve for doing an 8-issue series on your own is long and hard. But one of the things that I wish I had done, and also this would really depend on your publishing process, because it's not something that would work for working with a publisher per se, because you're just kind of running and gunning, cranking out issues as you go. And sometimes the cover artist is not the same as the interior artist. But for me working on it, I wish that I had not just drawn all the covers at the same time, but I wish I had done all of the thumbnails at once. So the process of working through, iterating what my possible cover ideas would be, like if I had said, all right, I've got 8 issues, I'm going to do all, now again, if you're doing like a 24 issue series or something that's gonna be going on for several years, I mean, mine was only 8 issues and it went on for several years. But, for someone who's a little bit faster, it might not necessarily be reasonable to do all of that at once. Maybe it's like you do an arc at a time. You do the covers for 4 issues or 6 issues or 8 issues, doing all of those at one time. But the idea of doing the thumbnails for them all at once, to me, it's similar to the idea of doing the thumbnails for a whole issue before I start drawing the issue. I like working out not just what's happening on the page, but how the pages are going to interact with each other, looking for places where I can plant foreshadowing, just trying to, also making sure I'm not repeating shots, all of these things that I do to try and make an image feel, an issue feel more seamless. I would try to apply those skills towards making cover art for my comics. So yeah, I mean, I still have a lot to learn as a cover artist myself. But hell, we're never going to be done with the learning process. That's one of the things that I don't find frustrating. I feel like that's one of the things that keeps me interested in making art and making comics, is that there's no point where I'm like, oh, all right, I got this. There's always a new wrinkle, a new twist on the process, something new to learn. This is a little bit off the camera here. I wonder, is my camera stuck? My hand does not seem to be, that's odd. On my end, I don't know if you guys can see me, but my camera looks like it's frozen. That's really weird. Yeah. Hang on a second while I try to fix these technical difficulties, and then I will come back to the questions in the chat. That's so weird. All right. Pulling out the camera, plugging the camera back in. All right. There we go. Yeah, that was weird. I don't know what happened. Let me see. I'm just feeling the camera to see if maybe it's getting too hot. Yeah. All right. So looks like that's all it was. All right. Back to conversations about. Oh yeah, Amar. I guess talking about animals. He says, I have that book as well, and I could see that people are into dark surrealistic art. The Wound book, I guess. All right, cool. Thank you. He says, I could see that people are into dark surrealistic art and would pick the book up just because of that alone. He said, because the cover touches on a bit of that H.R. Giger feel. Well, Giger is definitely one of my influences. I don't think my influences show on the surface, which I think that's both. It's cool that I am influenced by a lot of things, because I think it's good to just be open-minded and like a lot of different types of art. I think that it is a little bit of a detriment to myself personally in terms of, branding my art or having a quote-unquote style, in that I still feel like my own style, it's hard for me to tell from inside my own head if I have a distinctive style. Because in my mind, everything I draw feels gets a bit of a mishmash of my influences and comes out feeling a little bit generic and not, some people tell me I do have a very distinct style, and they'll mention it's got a little bit of a Gil Kane feel to it, which is a great compliment to be compared to such an artist. But yeah, Giger is one of my definitely one of my influences. Early on in college, I really went through a heavy Giger phase. Let's see here. Amar says Aaron Blaze has quite a few free and inexpensive classes on his website. He says he should also have some on his channel. Yeah, definitely, Negro Frazetta, check out Aaron Blaze's. I know that you've talked about Aaron Blaze too, so I'm sure you've checked out his channel and his website. But yeah, if you're looking for some more animal drawing classes, that's probably Aaron Blaze is a good place to check out, both for his website and then anything he has on Proco. And again, like I mentioned, Tara Whitlatch too. I'm pretty sure she has a course on schoolism that was added on there recently. I think this drawing is pretty much done. And on one hand, before I come back to the chat, on one hand, I feel like structurally, he feels, that neck is probably a little bit too short. I got a little bit too caught in the foreshortening. Another thing, if I compare this to the original drawings that I'm looking at, well, the proportions, on both of these, the proportions are horrible. The head is too small on this body. And I think I repeated the same mistake here, even though I brought it in a little bit closer. But on this drawing here, there's more of a sway between his upper torso and his lower torso. So these are the kind of things where I'm not going to do it in front of you guys, but usually I would probably just redraw. The same way that this has the same drawing 3 times on this page, I would just go back and draw this one again and just work it until I figure out what it is that's not working. But we'll move on to another drawing. And I don't think necessarily any of the ones on this page are bad drawings per se. They're just not very finished, very loose. These were, I want to say, 3-minute poses. Maybe they were 5-minute, but they're real loose. So I'm just going to pick one, start sketching it. My tendency is to pick whichever one I feel is the worst because it gives me the most to work on. All right, so comments. Let's see here. I think we're all caught up. Negro Frazetta says, have you ever heard of an LA artist by the name of Ray Bustos? I considered taking his course on animal drawing. I have not heard of Ray Bustos, but I will definitely check him out because it's always nice to see what other people are teaching and see if there's stuff I can learn from them. So no, I'm not familiar with him. To be honest, there's not really a lot of animal drawing instructors in LA that I'm particularly aware of. I want to say, I'm trying to remember who it was. There was somebody at the Animation Guild that used to do a class on animal drawing at the zoo. I want to say it was Mark McDonald, who teaches a gesture at the Animation Guild, but I could be wrong. So right now I'm starting, and again, you'll recognize this from our art book study group, just in terms of working on the Walt Reed method, where I'm starting with just 2, and what's interesting is I've started changing the way I'm thinking of the rib cage and the pelvis. And I'm not so much treating them as boxes or spheres or cylinders or eggs. I am treating these days, well, the pelvis still probably works better as a sphere or a box. But a lot of times when I'm blocking them in, I am treating them as squished cylinders. So if you take this ellipse, and this isn't an ellipse that is a cylinder, it's taking a circle and squishing it, almost like a deodorant. If you used a thing of right guard or whatever, and you've got your upper body like that, and you've got your lower body like that. I've been using this kind of conceptual shape. But the thing about that is there's always going to be reasons to change the type of conceptual shape you're looking at, which is why I don't think it's necessarily good to say, the rib cage or the pelvis is one thing. Because you may look at this and say, you know what, in order to understand what I'm looking at, I need a box with a side and a front and a bottom, just to help you figure out where to place the lighting correctly. And you might say, you know what, I really need the rounding of the rib cage, so I need the egg shape. And it depends on what you're drawing and why. Because, you'll find different books will tell you to conceive of different parts of anatomy with different types of primitive shapes. Maybe they'll say to use a box, because even if you look at Bridgman with his books on the human machine, or his general guide to drawing life, or his book on the head, there's times when he will, use a circle to help describe the head. There's times when he will use boxes to describe the head. And there's times when you can use a circle you can use a box to describe the head, but sometimes a circle would really help, or an egg shape would help to define the head better. So again, all of these things, you can describe the rib cage this way. You can describe it with that kind of squished cylinder that I was using. You can describe this exact same rib cage just with a box. The point is to get something down to help as a structure, to start thinking of the human body as a three-dimensional object, almost as if these boxes are the marble that you are going to sculpt your drawing out of. And you can mix it up. You can do a box for the upper body. Scoot this in a little bit, just so you don't run off the page here. You use a box for the upper body. Use a spear for the pelvis. I mean, the idea I'm doing here is I'm indicating that the pelvis is turning down and behind the figure. There's a whole host of ways to conceive of the primitive forms of a figure before you start drawing them, and that's good to be aware of when you're locking in your figure, just so that you give yourself a little bit of options in terms of what you want to do. Now I'm back to the study that I'm doing. So here I've got this figure kneeling. I'm going to put a little bit of a ground plane here so that I can have the leg go up a bit, foot come down, and then the toe is actually bent there. And even this, I'm looking at this and I'm wondering if I made this long enough. We'll have to see. This is one of those where, because of this model, particularly long-legged, I might need to come back in and adjust all of these dimensions. Now, coming in here, I kind of want to put in a light line to define how much the pelvis is tilted away from us, that we're actually seeing the backside. A little cut in here for where the iliac crest is going to come down. Now he's got one hand. All right, now I can actually remember. What's odd is now I'm getting that sense memory. I'm actually remembering the pose the model had because the hand was resting on a block next to the model's hand was resting on a table, but their wrist came down sort of below the corner of the table, and their palm rested up, and the fingers were up there, were up on top of the table. It's kind of an interesting dynamic pose. And up. So these are both moving forward in space. Or, well, they're moving away from us, but they're moving forward for the model. And that's something that I still have to work on mentally, is remembering when I'm doing my gestures. Because at this point now, I'm definitely moving in two-dimensional space. But the idea is thinking about the picture plane and saying, all right, is this moving toward the viewer? No, it's moving away from the viewer. It's moving into the picture plane, as it were. And then the forearm is moving even deeper into the picture plane. And these are all little things that I try to keep in mind as I'm correcting my drawings. And this is an interesting way to think about it, because I know a lot of you get frustrated when your drawings don't come out well. And what I really have found a great way to approach this is I forget about the drawing turning out well. And for me, the process is very similar to, it's funny because my approach to writing is very much informed by being an artist. And I find that my approach to an artist is starting to be informed by writing, in that the art, the block in and the rough sketch is like your first draft. Very few good writers publish their first draft, unless they're revising as they go. More often than not, you guys have heard this expression before, writing is rewriting. And I feel like I have taken that approach towards drawing. I'm not trying to make a brilliant piece of work first time out, or even a second time out. What I'm trying to do is just refine and refine. And some people find that boring. It also can be, it's time consuming. Some people can find it tedious and feel like they lose a lot of the spontaneity in a drawing. And you don't want to lose your spontaneity and your energy. But I think no matter what your process, keeping your spontaneity is a challenge. I should not have gone in and drawn all of this anatomical detail on this arm without finishing the arm and head first. That's a no-no. I always tell myself, get the whole figure blocked in. You've seen me even harp on that just in this session. But, so I mean, and I'm telling you this to show you that I'm trying to catch my bad habits as I do them, and that's a big part of this practice as well, is along with refining and just saying, all right, I'm just going to fix this and fix that. And I look at it like it's not so much a drawing process, it is an editing process. I'm trying things out, having them go wrong, and then saying, all right, I need to try something else out. And I'm using my experience and knowledge to help guide me. But even with that experience and knowledge, I'm still making mistakes. And instead of getting mad that I'm making mistakes, getting frustrated, feeling like I'm untalented or no good, I'm simply saying, this is my process. This is how you get to making something good. And that doesn't mean, the hope is that I can someday sit down and draw and have things come out really good on my first pass, which still doesn't mean they're going to be perfect. I'm going to have them come out really good on my first pass, be able to get to something that's a final piece quicker. That is the goal. But the process is through refinement, redrawing, and fixing, rather than expecting something to be perfect right out of the gate, because it's not. The whole process of studying figure drawing is a process of refining and fixing in my mind my knowledge of anatomy
proportion, volume, and structure. All of that is, I'm working on that just by virtue of these studies. And I have found that I really, really enjoy it. You know, I don't find this tedious. I don't feel like this is some crappy homework assignment that I have to do. I feel like it's exhilarating because it's lighting up the part of my brain, the line between me knowing things and not knowing things becomes brighter. It's becoming more vivid. I'm in that space, not in the zone of everything's coming out perfect. I'm in that zone of I can see what I don't know. And that gives you that sense that there's a path forward between the artist that you are and the artist that you want to be. Ugh, I really made, yeah, that, I don't know what's up with that line. That line does not need to be there. In fact, which really is happening is that the abs should be coming down out of the rib cage, coming in a little bit, then down more, pulling into the pelvis. That's probably a better representation of what's going on here. This is what I mean when I'm talking about the model had a very slender build, but extremely muscular with broad shoulders, which is visually a little bit confusing. It's something I've noticed lately, and I don't know if it's the newsprint that I'm using or whether it's the pencil. I think it's the newsprint because I've discovered this with a few of the pencils. After I draw and erase a few times, like the lines here just get super grainy. I can't get a smooth line or smooth texture anymore. And it bothers me because I want to get smooth lines and smooth textures. Let me see. Let me hop back up to the chat here and see if there's anything going on. By the way, we're at an hour, so I think I am going to finish this drawing, and then we're going to call it a day. So maybe it'll take me another 10 minutes to finish this drawing. But while I'm finishing it, if anybody else has any final questions or topics they want to, talk about or hit up while we're here, go ahead and fire those out. Let me know. And you know what? I just realized I'm trying to think. I'll have to double check the schedule, but I think tomorrow, Monday night, might be the next art book study group. It's something we do every 2 weeks. So I will double check the schedule and I'll post a link on Discord just so that the patrons don't have to hunt for it. But I believe that we are almost to another session of art book study group. Let's see, back in the chat, Amar says, I like using spheres and rectangles, but I also like using the hanger or wishbone approach. I call it shoulders, ribcage, and hips. Yeah, I think I know the thing you're talking about where you've got almost like it's a hanger up here, like this, except, above this hanger is the shoulders, and then people will have the rib cage hanging there, and then hanging down from that is the pelvis. Draw that a little bit thicker. Yeah, I believe I've seen people using that method, and I think it's a really good method. I think is part of a conversation that we've been having on Discord in general, like with all of us, kind of the shared conversation we have in there about the idea of being a master of all techniques and a slave to none. And I bring that up just in the sense of having multiple ways to conceive of the figure, to conceive of primitive volumes. And it's not that there's any one that is the right way, but it's like if you've got all those tools in your tool belt, then no matter what pose the model takes, you've got some way to approach it, to conceive of it on the paper. on the page. Another reason for me to really need to draw the whole figure in my lay-in instead of like jumping around to different body parts right there is I can see just by looking at this that the whole figure does not feel cohesive. It doesn't feel, it feels like it's a collection of body parts instead of a whole. And that's not good. I want the whole figure to feel cohesive. Switch pencils. And I think that problem I was having with the graininess might also be that I just need to sand down that pencil a little bit. Sometimes I just put a stray mark down and it's just like instantly I know it's wrong. And it's funny because in this digital age, I think enough artists have joked about that. Every artist has a point at some, has a experience at some point in the digital age of making art where they're drawing traditionally, they make a mistake, and their hand just goes trying to hit Control Z, like just as a reflex. You get used to that. Or if you're drawing on Procreate, you just instantly you're like trying to step back. And I'm like, nope, I just have to erase it and draw it again. Let's see here. Jay King says, back to work. Thanks a lot for your time, brother, and enjoy, everyone. Thank you so much. I appreciate you you popping in and hanging out. I hope that you are being productive and happy and healthy. Amar says, for arms, I like using an S slope that can be more dramatic for women when adding arms and legs. Amar says, LOL. True, how spoiled computers make us. Yeah, you know what? I mean, we're lucky. I mean, can you imagine what the old masters could make if they had the technology that we have now? But it always comes down to the fact that it's not the tools, it's the mind wielding them. At least until the computers become sentient and then put us all out of business. But you know what's funny? The difference is that the technology, you know, cannot enjoy art the way that that humans do. You know, a machine can make art because we tell it to make art. If we get to the point where AI can literally go through and storyboard a film for us, or a thumbnail a comic book based on a script, which I think is something that Adobe Max is working on. I mean, I haven't heard any news about Adobe Max since they did that whole presentation on their comic creation software. So I haven't heard anybody say anything one way or the other. I mean, at first it came out and people were just like, oh my God, it's the end of comics and it looks like it's gonna be garbage. I can tell you I was doing a little bit of art history reading, and there was an instructor who taught at the École Belle Arts in France. He was a contemporary of Charles Bard from the Bard method. And when he started seeing the daguerreotypes, early photography, and seeing the images people were making, I wish I could remember who it was, but he was the one who coined the phrase, painting is dead. Because he saw photography and just said, well, no one's going to need us to do this anymore. But that's also because people were looking at art, you know, they were looking at it from a guild craftsman standpoint. They weren't looking at it for, I mean, yes, people go into art because they find making art pleasurable, but they were looking at it as a trade, you know, doing commissions and doing paintings for different dukes and duchesses or different churches. You know, these were commissions, these were jobs for them. This is their career. They weren't just saying, I love art and I want to make art. But that said, you know, this happens, you know, photography, if any, obviously photography is more ubiquitous now than it was even then, even in like the turn of the 19th century. And yet people still draw and paint. Why? Because the actual act of making art, we have a spiritual connection to. And that's something that all the technology in the world won't give a machine. And I think that even if machines are able to create art that is entertaining, satisfying, I think that spiritual connection, unless they find a way to have machines imitate that, you know, there will always be a place for humanity within the creative process, no matter what the machines can do. Maybe it'll let people who don't actually have any drawing skill tell stories. And I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing, because right now, you know, people who don't necessarily have any artistic skill, you know, they hire artists and they collaborate with them. Maybe this will let people who, writers, be able to collaborate with machines and make art without necessarily working with a living artist, which, you know, on the surface sounds like, oh, that would be I would be against that. But I just feel like if you're able to make good art with whatever tools you have, more power to you. It's not going to stop me from wanting to make artwork on my own. And, you know, this whole thing of people talking about technology being able to make art, there's also a lot of, you know, talk about using AI to help in writing. Maybe artists, instead of working with a writer, will start using AI to write first drafts of stories for them, then go through, make changes to things that they do or don't like, and then have an AI editor come in and have somebody do story edits, or maybe they have a human person come in and do edits. Maybe it's something where artists start doing some of the writing without working with a writer. You know, they let the machine do the writing. So it's a two-way street. I don't think that it's necessarily one way or the other. There's a author named Joanna Penn who does a podcast called The Creative Pen, and she has a YouTube channel. So you can check her out. You can just go straight from here to her on YouTube. But I'm sorry, I didn't notice that the drawing was going off of the page a little bit. But she is very much into AI and futurist technology. And she does a ongoing series where she, aside from just interviewing authors about the creative process, authors, self-publishers, various creatives, she frequently does episodes just about AI technology and how it's affecting publishing, writing, creativity. So I urge you to check that out. She definitely does not have a technophobic approach. She frequently uses the phrase, she is a techno-optimist. The idea that these things will make the lives of creatives better and give us more control as opposed to making it worse. And I think that that can be just as true for artists, for visual artists, as it is for writers. All right, at this point, I'm just trying to keep it simple. Block in these basic volumes of the feet here. It's not that good of a foot. I'll come back in and refine that. See what the chat says here. Amar says, check out 2-minute papers. That channel is always showing off cutting edge tech. Machine learning is getting there. And for 3D, you have photogrammetry scans. I'm not pronouncing that right. But I assume that that's scanning a photo and then building 3D models just from the photographic image. It sounds pretty cool. So yeah, I don't really need to get, well, I feel like this has gotten a little bit muddy and messy in here in terms of the line between structure and anatomy. I don't feel like this has as much structure as I would like it to. But feet are also notoriously difficult to draw because it's kind of both simple but awkward. You know, it's got this overall wedge shape, but the heel is rounded. It doesn't have, like, you know, it's got the foot has definite front, back, side, top planes, but the transitions to all of the forms are soft transitions. And that's what makes the foot hard to draw. Because something that is a very hard, it goes from front to back, left to right. You know, those things are easier to draw, in my opinion. And the reason why I feel they're easier to draw is simply you can structurally, you can look at it with a little bit more of an architectural feel to it. Whereas when everything has a soft turn to it, you've got to be more subtle. And you really have to understand what the object is that you're turning, trying to create a sense of turning, whether it's muscle or bone. Because it's real easy with all of these soft turns for it to just kind of feel like mush instead of feeling like a very specific object that you are making a visual statement about. This is the shape of this object, and this is the nature of it. This is a flexed muscle. This is a bone that's not sticking out, but like a visual landmark, a bone that's on the surface. And I'll tell you a mistake that I made with this pose. I've got the pelvis is too much of a 3/4. It should really be more profile. And the change was as simple as just erasing the crease in the buttocks and changing the position of it. And like that, you go to more of a profile. So I have sort of drawn and redrawn over this page enough times that it's getting like misty with gray tone and hard to draw on top of. So it's another reason for drawing lightly, both in terms of the tone, but also just how much pressure you're putting on the paper. Because I think it starts to give under being worked and reworked at a certain point. Which is a good argument for doing studies on better quality paper than newsprint. I do have some nice toned paper. I usually save those when I'm taking a figure drawing class, specifically on long poses and when we're working on tone. I'll break out the white chalk. Just trying to get that twist of that toe in here. So this is the downside of bringing the camera down closer, is that I don't notice when I slide down and end up a little bit off of the page. But still, I think that the overall benefits, as long as I remember to keep checking and moving it up. All right, yeah, I think that we are done here. Yeah, last couple of comments. Amar mentions, yeah, building 3D images from multiple photos. You know what? I realize now that I've seen that commercial for Microsoft. It's not Microsoft Surface, but where they show that thing where they're taking an old, I don't know if it's like a Greek Acropolis, but they're taking like this old archaeological site, and they're photographing all of it, and the photos are building a 3D model out of the photos. This is pretty cool. Amar says, yeah, people always say hands, but feet are always harder to me than hands. I agree. Hands have character to them. Like you can almost like hands, you can make a gesture with a hand the same way you can make a gesture with a human body. And the same way you've got like a torso and then 4 limbs. You've got your palm and 4 fingers, and then the thumb to me is kind of the head. Like I kind of treat it like I'm drawing an animal. When I draw a hand, I'm thinking about animal drawing. That's kind of crazy, but that's what it is. I'm thinking of it like it's a creature. That's how I try to get character into my hands. Let's see here. Yeah, Amar says feet are pretty much there. Could look like a block if you don't know the form. He says feet on women are totally different, similar form but more curvy in shape. Yes, very true. He says if you can draw horse calves and hobbles are very similar to women's legs. This is the curve connecting the calf to the inside of the ankle and foot. All good points. You know, and that's one of the things I like about studying animals. And I realized this, I think, after a session of going to the zoo and drawing animals. And I realized that the elegance that we try to capture in a model, animals naturally have that. Like they're just not self-conscious. They don't have the self-consciousness that we have. They are all grace and gesture. In fact, if your gestures feel stiff, go to the zoo and draw animals. That'll help loosen you up, because animals are just, they're fluid. I mean, they also don't sit still, but in every pose that they have, or even if you do like multiple sketches of them, you know, you'll get a lot of sense of gesture and flow doing that. So on that note, guys, we're gonna wrap it up here. Again, I appreciate you all hanging out, spending time with me, watching my creative process, my creative studies. Next week, we'll be back to something more illustrated related. I'll probably be further along on that Morningstar cover, or I'll be working on some other illustration. I have no idea. I'm playing it by ear lately. Since I finished Morningstar, I've still been really vague in terms of figuring out what my next plans are. I know the comics that I plan to do in the future, but I haven't spent a lot of time on the writing side of that. I don't know why. Maybe I'm afraid a little bit. I know that writing is enjoyable once I get into it, but I've been procrastinating a little bit, no doubt. I think part of it's also I have a ton of things that I've been putting off while I was working on Morningstar. So I feel like I need to work on 100 different small projects before I start another new big one, and just take care of all of these little things about like my website, things that I'm offering, and learning how to run a Kickstarter campaign. And just, there's all these things that I've been planning to do that's why I'm a bit scattered. Is because I know that when I start the next series, that's going to be another long, focused process. So I want to finish as many small things that I put off as possible. I want to get a lot of those done. So this is a year of small projects and catching up and experimenting. So it's going to be a little weird and wonky. If you've been watching my stream for years and watched stuff in the past, it is going to be a very fly-by-night and trying different stuff and lots more figure drawing as I'm trying to level up my skill, even though I want to do a comic style that's simpler and less, less detailed. I know it seems ironic, but I feel like the figure drawing studies that I'm doing will only enhance the ways in which I simplify my art. It means that when I do something that's a quicker, simpler style, the fewer lines that I use, the less, will be closer to the right lines. The shapes that I use will be close to the right shapes due to these studies. So even with me trying to simplify my art, doing figure drawing studies, doing anatomy studies are probably even more important than before. I see Ballpoint in the chat. Says, hey, you know what, Ballpoint? I feel bad. You're just catching me at the end here. I'm getting ready to sign off. But as soon as I sign off, you can jump back to the beginning and watch the whole live stream. So letting everybody else know, if you would like to participate in Art Book Study Group, we've been studying from Walt Reed's The Figure. We go through, we take some of the finest art books around, in this case, the Figure, and we'll go page by page. And it's a study group. I sit down, much like I'm drawing from figure drawings here. We sit down and we pick a page from Walt Reed, and I sketch and I analyze. I try to see what Walt Reed is trying to explain and teach, or whatever book that I'm studying from, trying to see and analyze what they're trying to get on the page and get into the heads of art journeyers, fellow art journeyers like us. We're going to be doing that. It'll be Monday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time. And that's for patrons on Patreon. I sent out the link. I'm probably going to send out a reminder later today or early tomorrow. But that's Art Book Study Group. Just one of the many things that we have available for being a Patreon subscriber. So you can go to patreon.com/GERIMI. It's patreon.com/Jeremy. You can go sign up for my newsletter. You can get a free digital sketchbook. It contains the rough sketch layout of the first 3 issues with Morningstar, but they're lettered. So you can see both the story, but also see the sketch of how I put that together. Along with that, I send out a monthly newsletter. It's got new finished art pieces, work in progress animated GIFs, kind of the best of the stuff that I share on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, so on and so forth. Get all of that delivered to your inbox once a month at newsletter.jeremy.net. One of the many things I should be working on, I should already be writing this the August newsletter, so I'm going to need to get on that. And again, if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, you can get Eye of the Gods. It is a psychological thriller about a man cursed with visions he cannot control. I'm the artist and writer, self-contained graphic novel, my first book. I'm very proud of this book. Very worth checking out. The preview page is available on Amazon. And you can pick up Volume 1 of Morningstar. Morningstar tells the story of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. This book contains issues 1 through 4, plus there's a sketchbook and back matter that has my layouts, parts of script, excerpts, whole lot of good stuff in there for you guys to check out. All of that at amazon.jeremy.net. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate you hanging out, spending time. That's it for now. Go be creative.